Hello, 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 New Haven, and welcome back to Arts Respond on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman. I'm really excited and happy to be back on this very dreary Friday afternoon talking about something beautiful and joyful. We can't get enough of that right now. With me I almost said with me in the studio because I'm still not used to Zoom after like 5.5 years of this, right? With me on Zoom are Gail, Corbin, and Samantha Geracht, and we are talking about Joy Dances for Midwinter, which is coming to the Episcopal Church of St. Paul and St. James, known by local folks just as St. PJ's in Worcester Square. It's a beautiful, beautiful church. You can't miss it. On December 6th, which is a Saturday at 3 and 7 p.m. So I want to get right into talking about, I like to talk about joy in general, but I want to talk about this joy specifically and what Joy Dances for Midwinter is, what folks can expect to see. And then also, during our time together, I would love for us just to talk about dance. Embodied practice is unlike anything else that exists in the world. And so let's get right into it and talk about this performance.
Great. So I put this concert together. I'm the director of the Socolo Theater Dance Ensemble. And for dance historians out there, Anna Socolo is best known for her sort of dark social justice works. And that is not all that she did. She did a huge range of work. But I was feeling a need personally for joy and for exuberance. And I worked to put together a concert that would bring to the audience what I was hoping to feel. So that includes 2 works by Anna Socolo, one to Rachmaninoff and one to Scriabin, a work by Hanya Home dancer, Murray Lewis dancer, Claudia Gellman, to a Schubert piece. And then because I have had the opportunity and the honor to work with Gail for many, many years, I asked her to set a large chunk of an excerpt of Charles Weidman's Christmas Oratorio on the company. So we have Bach, we have Rachmaninoff, we have Scriabin, we have Schubert, we have glorious dancing, and that was the goal of this entire concert, was to bring all of that exuberance and a little bit of, Christmas joy spirit without the Nutcracker to audiences who are big fans of dance. Not that I'm not a huge fan of that, but sometimes we want other options.
I was going to say, no shade to the Nutcracker.
Not even a little bit. I'm a huge fan. I go and I see it every year, but no shade at all. But that just to have a very classic modern dance to beautiful classical music evening. And that is what we are bringing to New Haven, which we're very excited to be coming there.
So I do want to, I want to spend a lot of time, especially Gail, since we have you with us, talking about the oratorio and the space, the specific space, which is not specifically designed for dance, but also is a space designed for sacred worship. And you could argue that dance is a kind of sacred worship, right? But I also want to talk about the other pieces as well. So I'm wondering, Samantha, if you can just tell us a little bit more about working with these pretty big canonical figures, the music of these big canonical figures, and what it means to be bringing this performance together, and then to New Haven specifically. So y'all are the Socolo Dance and Theater Ensemble is based in New York. So you're making the itty bitty trip to New Haven.
So we are a artistic partnership member of an organization called Sacred Spaces, Partnership for Sacred Spaces. So last year we actually had a grant to perform this concert. It was the first time we did this to see how it all hung together in a church theater space in Queens, New York, in Ridgewood. And so when we designed the concert, we designed it with in mind to be in a sacred space and what it meant to be in somebody's sanctuary performing dance and the choices that you make because of that. So when I designed the concert, it was meant to be actually in a church space. It brings something else to it that, not that I don't love a theater, I do, but being in a church space that's this kind of magnificent, and we are so lucky. The space in New Haven is really tremendous. So we did that deliberately. And then in terms of choices of music, I mean, really, what do you want to bring into church spaces but something glorious, right? And so all of these pieces have two sides to them. They're glorious and big and exuberant, but they're also all choreographers, all of those choreographers, Sokolow, Gellman, Weidman, were very, very connected to their sense of humanity and bringing people on stage, right? These are human beings. They are not otherworldly. They are not other beings. They're not priestesses. They're not fairies. They are people who are exuberant and in moments of glory and joy. So that is how this concert was put together, and that's how this music makes sense in this space for these dances and these kind of iconic choreographers.
And I should say, and I also, it's interesting, the name that you did not mention was Rachmaninoff. I mean, you mentioned Rachmaninoff at the beginning, but I just think of him as like so dramatic, just like the personification of drama. So yeah, so I think that's interesting as well. And I should say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Passionate. The dance preludes.
Yeah.
It is a passionate dance, and I think that it fits in this space.
Yes, and I should say, churches, I think partly just because of a dearth of like formalized studio spaces that exist. This is certainly something that I hear in New Haven, which is much smaller than New York City, of course. Like churches have been used for time immemorial for dance. And I think probably certainly they were used before we thought of like what we think of as a studio now. So Gail, I want to bring the discussion to you, and I should say, is Hamdenite the right word?
Well, I lived in New Haven for quite a few years, so you can call me a New Havenite. It's okay.
Yes, and to talk about the setting the Christmas oratorio, excuse me, in this space, and your vision for it as it is coming into this space.
Well, first of all, I learned Christmas oratorio a couple of decades ago from a woman named Deborah Carr, who worked with Charles Weidman at the end of his life for a couple of years, and so she had reconstructed Christmas oratorio, which he made into an evening-long work. What we're doing and what she did often was excerpt this, which you can do. We have quite a few excerpts that we're doing in this concert, and just to bring it back to the church, the New Haven St. James Church is so conducive to movement and presentation. The pews are not fixed to the floor, so you can really manipulate the seating to allow for more space on the floor. And it is tiered. It has, like 3 or 4 tiers going up to the altar, which can also accommodate movement and dancers and actors. This particular piece, as I said, there are many excerpts, and some of it are sort of tableaus. There's a nativity scene, which has glorious movement and beautiful music, but there's shepherds and there's an angel and there's the Madonna. So it really lends itself to that kind of piece. So when we went to see the St. James Church, it was just like a great match. And what I'd like to do is, I'm going to restage some of it so that I can use those tiers of space that are sort of built in to in terms of a theater. It's not a proscenium theater. It's not a theater at all, but it has that quality, definitely.
And I should say, oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, it's okay.
Oh,
go ahead. No.
Oh, just that St. PJ's. I feel like I don't want to get in hot
He
water.
did, yes.
I feel like among other churches in New Haven really has been used for that use, at least for the past couple decades, if not
Yes.
longer than that. So during his tenure, which ended pretty recently, Reverend Harlan Dalton was really known for jazz services and jazz
Yeah.
worship in the space. Of course, we know that Annie Saylor, who passed away earlier this year, used it for modern dance many, many times. I think in the, I want to say like the early to mid 80s.
Yeah.
And yeah, so absolutely.
And it has, it has that cathedral aspect that is so wonderful. And, from my perspective and everybody else's, Bach is, the sort of cathedral kind of composer. So it really fits in to that kind of space where it's just sort of endless ceiling, and just beautiful, gorgeous windows. It has beautiful windows, which are I've heard Tiffany windows. They're beautiful stained glass. And we're going to be adding a little bit of light to enhance the dancers. So everyone can see their faces and their expressions as well as their bodies. So it seems like a really, really good match for this concert.
I also want to ask about the practice of dance itself, because I think I was recently at a memorial for a dancer who passed, and someone told me, like, oh, I went to this performance. It was a performance of modern dance, and it was way too intellectual for me, and I didn't get it, and I don't know what it was all about. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about dance itself and what is unique to the art form that you believe is like really specific and special about this performance.
Well, the kind of dance that I have sort of devoted my career to and my life to was born via Doris Humphrey and Charles Weidman, two modern dance pioneers, classic modern dance pioneers, in the early part of the 20th century and through the mid-century. And they were very much about humanity, about the human condition, whether it be beautiful and joyous like this is, or just the opposite. So it's very much down to earth and not intellectual. However, it is also extremely dynamic, so that when you're dancing to something like Bach and an oratorio, you really have to live up to that music, meaning you have to understand the intricacies. And they were both very adept ensemble choreographers. So when you see 10 people on the stage all doing counterpoint, it's not an intellectual thing. However, it's really it's complicated, if you know what I mean. So I don't think that anyone's going to view this concert and think, oh, I don't understand. And I do know what you mean about that. But I think that we are in touch with our humanity, with being people, with being men, women, whatever, people. And it's very much relatable. They wanted, the early modern dancers, and Anna Sokolow was part of this too, very much part of it. The early modern dancers wanted very much to speak about, as I've said again, humanity, and their mantra was dancing from the inside out, so that it was not something that was put on. It was not something that was sort of external that you sort of fit into. It was from them outward. So it goes out, as opposed to being introspective.
Samantha, I would love to bring your voice in as well.
Yes. So, well, the first thing is, I think that for all of these dances, at the audience, you're going to feel it like kinetically, like you have a kinetic response to watching it because it's big and it's glorious and it's beautiful dancing. So that's one piece that I think makes it accessible. And the costumes are gorgeous, those kinds of things, and dancers are beautiful. But also, because of the kind of work it is, you also have a visceral understanding of the drama that you're watching, whether it's the fall and recovery dramatic movement of the oratorio, or like in Ballade, it's sort of restless young love, but you can see it because it's so built into the choreography that audiences don't have to sit there and be like, what am I watching? What am I seeing? And how, it's not literal, it's all abstract narrative. So it's not like you're trying to follow along a plot that you don't understand. You're going to sense it in your gut, and you're going to sense it in your spine. And that's the way to participate and watch stuff, even if you're new to modern dance and it's unfamiliar.
Do you feel like people go into a flow state? I watch some dance. There isn't that much live dance in New Haven. I actually wish there was more. Do you feel like you go into a flow state when you're either doing or consuming modern dance? I mean, in the way you sort of do with classical music, where at some point you realize, like, it's not that a person gets lost in it, in my experience, it's that you have allowed your body to just sort of be absorbed into the music.
Well, I think that, when Samantha spoke about kinetic, dance is when you view dance, you really should have a kinetic response. Not that you are dancing in your seat, but that you understand that connection of movement to what you're actually feeling. And that's when dance is really, really good. It's like you look at that and say, I know what that means. I understand because I can feel it myself. I understand what he's reaching for. I understand why they're breathing that way. I think that dance has to communicate. That's its purpose. It doesn't have to be a big story. It doesn't have to be a grand theme, but it has to communicate something. And I always feel that dance, if you sort of boiled it down, the closest art form I think that dance is poetry, because poetry is kind of like that. It's sort of it. You may think I don't really understand what they're saying, but there's an essence there, and dance is very like that too. However, I think that these choreographers that we are presenting are very, very good at crafting. They're really good craftspeople of choreography. So it's a work that is complete. It's not just seeing people moving around. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, it has themes that are recognizable. It has music that is relatable in that way. So I do believe that there isn't, it's not going to be the kind of thing, well, I don't really get it. I don't think that that's going to be the case in terms of reactions when this dance is experienced.
I also want, because I mean, I think even just the title, channeling joy, especially right now.
Yeah.
I want to ask about what it feels like to be preparing this work, performing this work, like at this juncture in the world. I don't know. Recently, I've been feeling like, okay, it can't possibly get worse. And then it gets worse.
Well, I will fess up that I needed it over a year ago when joy was being thrown around a little more often.
Do you mean that as a buzzword or as an actual thing?
Well, I mean,
like joy is a buzz, because we talk about joy, right? I mean, I do believe that joy is a form of resistance, and I also believe that the arts have always been very important, but are very, very important right now. It's where we're turning to like cope with everything.
Yeah.
But do you mean that sort of as like joy is a buzzword, or joy is an actual thing?
As joy, so for me, it had to be an actual thing, because part of it is that Anna Sokolow when we would be in states like this, made these incredible dances, which we also do, which we will also be doing, right? That speak of isolation and inhumanity and, you know, finding the light in the worst and the darkest moments. I mean, she's a genius at that. But I didn't want to only be dancing that. As an artistic director, I feel like it would be so easy to only produce only those works right now. Like, let's do Dreams, let's do Rooms, let's do Steps of Silence. I have a huge repertory of genius works that address and show you how you're feeling right now, right? But we can't only be in that space forever. I think it's not healthy for any of us, and that we have to acknowledge all of that. And as I said, we will be performing those works, but that it was also important to have a concert that balanced it, and that also reminds us that we are joyful and we can find joy, and that all of this is also there, right? It doesn't go away, it doesn't disappear. It's underneath there, even when things seem impossibly difficult.
I think it's wonderfully cathartic too, to see something joyous and to celebrate what in that moment. And because it is just, these are moments, you know, there's a moment when you see live performing, and you hear that music. I think it's just important for everybody, every person, to experience that kind of beauty, that kind of relief of, this is wonderful, and escape. You know, I suppose it's escapism. You know, but it's also reality. You know, there has to be joy. There has to be beauty, and bringing that to the fore is, I think, incredibly important.
So I also I want to go back to the performance itself, but I love a good story. I love unpacking a good story. That's like the best part of the work I do. And so for both of you, I would love to know how, like, was it that dance found you, or that you found dance, or a little bit of both?
I think it was a little bit of both for me. I had started out in theater at the conservatory that I attended long ago, and as part of the curriculum, dance really, you had to take dance classes, and I suddenly became aware that I actually loved it, and loved it more than studying theater. So I switched, and yes, so I guess it sort of found me and I found it. And then it's not the kind of thing, and then it's almost like you don't have a choice. You have to do this. You have to, and believe me, it's not easy, as Samantha can tell you too.
It's very rigorous. Dance is extremely rigorous.
Yeah, well, not even rigorous, but it's, it doesn't pay. I mean, it's not what you call, a lucrative profession, but it's something that you, like any artist, you have to do, and you want to do, and it becomes who you are. And it just embodies you. And then, of course, there's certain, throughout one's life, and you gravitate to a certain place, whether it's your own, whether you become a composer yourself, and concentrate on that, or as the path that I took, became immersed in a certain technique and then became an exponent of that. Or Samantha, with her experience, which is relatively relatable from mine, it's just something that you are compelled to continue.
So my family lore is a little crazy. I have been told by my parents that I announced before I was 3 years old that I was going to be a ballerina. And my mother, who is an educator, assumed that I would move on to horses next, which did not happen. And I started in ballet, but I was really not built for it. And I didn't really discover modern dance till I was in high school. But once I found my niche there, and then at university, and then at New York afterwards, I just there was no choice. It was a straight line in that way. How I got to my career and how I landed in Saco, a little longer story, but really, there was no decision making to happen. I was going to be a dancer, no matter how many roadblocks were set in front of me, and each time I could bypass it. And I'm not really performing so much anymore, but I have discovered, in addition to loving to teach and to grow dancers and to work with the company, I really like to curate. And my role as a curator has really been one of the most special part of being the artistic director, because not only do I get to bring Sokolo's work up whenever I want to, I have the most amazing repertoire to pull from, but I can make it work with other things and contextualize it. And I worked with Gail, I danced with Deborah Carr also in the Christmas Oratorio when I was a dancer. And so to have her come in and teach the company, I mean, yes, I wanted to bring Christmas Oratorio to the audiences, but also I looked at my company and I said, well, if I were them, this is what I would want to be doing. And I would want to work with Gail if I was them, because she's the one who can do it. So I make those kinds of decisions, not just for audiences, but for the dancers and for their benefit.
Gail, I want to go back to the oratorio and talk to you more about that. But first, I'm just going to remind people that if you're just joining our conversation, or if you've been hanging out with us, this is WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven. I'm your host, Lucy Gellman. This is Arts Respond, a collaboration with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven and WNHH. And I am here today with Gail Corbin and Samantha Geracht, and we are talking about Joy Dances for Midwinter, presented by the Sokolo Theater Dance Ensemble. It is coming to the Church of St. Paul and St. James in Worcester Square at 57 Olive Street on December 6th. That's a Saturday at 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. I almost said 6 p.m., not 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Gail, I want to bring it back to you and talk more about this specific iteration of the oratorio, how it lives, sort of how it is blooming, and the learnings you're bringing from it. Because I think even when you're revisiting a piece, it hits differently every single time.
It does indeed. And also depending on the dancers that you have, the cast that you have. Dance is ephemeral. It's organic. And so, yes, you have set choreography, but you have to, and depending on space, we're dancing in a church, which again is not a theater. So the transitions have to be somewhat different. But it doesn't take away from the essence of the work. The work is still the same, but you have to, you depending on who you have, how many dancers you have, this particular piece requires, often 10 or 11 dancers on stage. So it's a big work. And the group, the Sokolo group that Samantha has, is the director of, is quite wonderful. They're very eager. They're in really good shape. They're loving it. It's hard. It's as I said before, it's really dynamic. Meaning there's a lot of different rhythms going on. The qualities are often different depending on the excerpt. The opening is glorious and lots of canon. Some of the other excerpts, the Madonna, the Nativity scene is much slower, full of glorious kind of beauty. There are shepherds. There's an angel. So there's different qualities that come through. Variations is full of fast, funny movement that is sort of quirky, but incredibly infectious and really speedy. And sort of it brings to mind lots of things. But underneath it all is this kind of glory of living, glory of living, and beauty, and sort of bringing, so the concept of the oratorio is bringing what is this glorious world to everyone. And being in the church really enhances that. So, I mean, it's a good place to do it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I think we have all of these traditions. Christmas, of course, is one, but that grew out of the very secular tradition of solstice. And I think folks saying like, oh, we with faith traditions need to have something that is similar to this. But this tradition of bringing light to the coldest, darkest season, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's very beautiful. Samantha, I also want to bring it to you and also really either of you could answer this. Also ask like, does it? I feel like dance is and Gail, you sort of referenced this. I feel like dance is sometimes like not taken seriously, perhaps because it's an art form that is primarily associated with women. And and so I'm curious, like as you have prepared and talked about this and are putting this out in the world, how are you thinking about it, especially in this? We're just in a funky arts landscape, especially right now.
So dance is always kind of the stepchild of the arts in a way, as we know, right? So arts have a hard enough time, and as however hard a time the arts are having, dance is having it harder. I think part of that has to do with the fact that we need space for our art form. And so, like, I live in a neighborhood in Jersey City that's considered an arts district, an arts neighborhood. So they have, lots of cool spots for music, and the coffee shops can hang gallery work. But it's not easy to say, and let's do dance, because there's nowhere to put it, right? We need room. And so that's the first thing, is it's difficult. And I do think that despite everything that we are, dance as an art form is particularly difficult because we have this sort of puritanical idea, even if we don't really live that way. And women's bodies in space on stage is not the first thing you think about, right? I mean, Anna Sokolow, and here you've got a picture, it's the 1920s, and being a dancer is not actually a career. It doesn't exist yet, right? Certainly being a modern dancer. She was a young dancer studying with Martha Graham in a settlement house on the Lower East Side. And she announces to her mother that she's going to be a dancer. And her mother uses a Yiddish word, but essentially says, so you're going to be a whore. And because the idea of an artist dancer is so hard. I mean, even now, when I speak to people, I say it's like you go to the MoMA, but it's dance instead of, you go to the art museum and it's dance instead of artwork, because dance has so many things it could be. And I actually love all of its iterations, but modern dance is tricky because people think it's weird or it's inaccessible, or it's like, I know what the ballet is, but I don't really, or I know what Broadway is, but I really don't understand what this is. And so, but modern dance now we're doing Charles Weidman, who also doesn't get enough history, he doesn't get enough airtime as far as I'm concerned. But modern dance was really formed by women. And, and I think that's probably part of why it's so difficult.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, Ted Shawn had a company of men. Ted Shawn he and his partner, wife Ruth St. Denis, started a company called Dennis Shawn in the early 20s, and all three of the American modern dance pioneers, Graham, Humphrey, and Weidman, were with Dennis Shawn and broke away. And what they contributed to, and there are others too, but what they contributed to, meaning the pioneers, was dance as a theater art. dance as an art form, as opposed to just entertainment. And so, which is not to say that dance as entertainment is bad. It's just that it's different. And there are a lot of men in dance that, I think whether it's ballroom or whether it's, concert dance or ballet, there are more women. That is true. That is very true. But there are men in dance, and I mean, Samantha's company. There's 4 men in this group, which is good. I mean, that's considerable.
Yeah, I think before I was asked what I was asking, and I think we actually see eye to eye on this, is I do think that dance is sometimes it's either like spoofed because it is an art form that, yes, includes men, but is still primarily associated with women and women's bodies.
Yeah.
Or you go to the other extreme where dance is just seen as this like really like art form that is filled with abusive and complicated power dynamics, a la Black Swan or something like that. And there's not a ton of like, there isn't a ton of actual, for folks who do not intentionally consume dance, because it is something where you have to seek it if you're like a pleb on the street like me, where you have to seek it out, where you have to make sure you have tickets in order, and things like that. And as we know, I mean, this is the arts in general, just with COVID, I think it's become much harder to get people to come out to stuff. Theaters are it's not just dance, it's kind of across I would say the performing arts, but even the fine arts, people have fewer folks coming out to their gallery openings too. And so
Very true. Yeah.
it's something that we're seeing. I did want to ask, I asked about how it feels to bring these pieces to the public right now, but it occurs to me, of course, as we're talking about these forefathers and foremothers of modern dance, they were working through incredibly dark times as well. There was cool stuff happening in the 1920s, but also you have, in a very short span of time, in the first half of the 20th century, you have World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, like the Holocaust, you have mass genocide. And as we know, these are topics that artists, including Anna Sokolow, I'm also thinking of like bread and puppet theater, which very different, but I think was formed around the same time, are all engaging with. And so do you feel like, do you feel these now ancestors of dance sort of moving through us and moving through the work?
I do all of the time because, well, first of all, the legacy and Sokolow's legacy is she was right at the center of that, right? She's making anti-fascist pieces in the 30s. She's making, she's putting on a symbol of a tefillin as a woman in 1945, and so she's absolutely a rebel in that way, right? But and what I found in general is that a new generation of choreographers now, they want to be making dances that are speaking to these present day issues, but they don't actually know the earlier works, because if you're a music student, you're going to study a huge range of music and play all of that music. And if you are an art student, well, certainly you've been to the Met and not only the Museum of Contemporary Art, but because it's so difficult to bring in people and the budget it takes to bring Gail Corbin in to set a Humphrey piece, or me in to set a Sokolow work, the students don't have the same kind of access. So it's kind of a weird, vicious cycle that happens. And so I think it's really important to show the full range and scope of these works to current dancers and current audiences.
Absolutely. And it's very, it really is, you can't forget that dance is in the moment. It is in the moment. It is done and it is gone. And that needs to be, you have to to be there to see it. You have to be there to do it. You have to be there to see it, or it's not there. And so having that, doing it, keep doing it, and that's the only way it's going to live, obviously.
I think that's true. I am very grateful for sort of like this archive that lives, right? There are certain dancers who did archive their work and who filmed their work and who have letters and transcripts. And I, as someone who like really loves history and believes history is real, which I don't know, I guess is becoming debatable increasingly. I'm very grateful for those documents. That's sort of
yes.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. There is no substitute for live performance.
No, there really isn't, and in our world now, screens are 95% of people's entertainment or knowledge for that matter. And so to have something live that was actually born, idea-wise and choreographically, decades ago is pretty amazing. And so both Samantha and I and, some of our colleagues are continuing this work through our bodies, through our teachings, through our setting the works, are continuing their vision in that particular work, but also those ideas.
And also, on top of that, on top of everything else that we're talking about, it is my job to make sure that I have a next generation who can do what I'm doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Every time that I'm working with, dancers or people, particularly in Samantha's company, who are doing certain work that, I'm giving them, they're responsible. They're going to be responsible in the future for saying, I know how to do this. I know what this piece was about, and this is the way it works. So there's an oral tradition going, and there's also just a body tradition, that is passed on.
Yeah.
Via technique, via choreographic works, via philosophies,
Yeah, I mean, I know that our time together is winding down, and I just want to remind folks, if you've been hanging out with us on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, or if you're just joining our conversation, we are here. We're talking about Joy Dances for Midwinter, which is coming to the Episcopal Church of St. Paul and St. James at 57 Olive Street on December 6th at 3 and 7 p.m. I spend a lot of time in classrooms in New Haven, including arts classrooms. And, I'm curious, as you talk about raising up that next generation, are we feeling hopeful about the future of dance? Because you're absolutely right that Chat GPT is not an embodied practice, right? Nor is it going to give you an accurate answer if you ask it to spit something out about Anna Sokolow or really about any. Please, if you're listening to this, please do not use AI for so many reasons. But do we feel hopeful about the future of dance?
I do, actually. I really do, because I think there's a huge range of dancers who are interested in history. There was a time where it was harder to find people who wanted to do old stuff, but that's not true anymore. They're looking at it because I think it speaks to who they are right now. And I'm really impressed with a lot of the younger choreographers who are making works that speak to now also. So I think that there's a huge range. This weekend, we're participating in a performance by Dance As We Dance, and there's a young dancer who choreographed a trio on it. It's just exquisite. And my colleague Lauren Naslund, the co-artistic director, said, you made what we feel. So they're learning to do it. So I actually feel that, given some space, because we need space, that there is a lot of really good work happening in the dance world. And
yes,
it's a small world.
Even if you don't do these works that we're talking about, the older or classic modern dance works that we are setting, even if you don't do those, it still can inform your own work. It still can, the movements, the craft in the choreography, you can still learn from what has been before, even if you don't do it yourself. So if you're a choreographer, you can be incredibly influenced and learn from the past.
Before and we just have a few more minutes left, and Harry Droz, who is the man behind the magic making this happen, is dropping the ticket link so folks can attend this performance of Joy Dances for Midwinter. Something with words today, y'all. Presented by the Socolo Theater Dance Ensemble on December 6th. That's a Saturday at 3 and 7 p.m. at the Episcopal Church of St. Paul and St. James, 57 Olive Street in New Haven. So folks can purchase those tickets. But as we wind down, I want to note, how are both of you finding joy in this moment, in your own lives, in your professional lives, in your artistic lives, whatever that answer may be?
Yes, I am, definitely. It's always a joy to do this. Sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes things may not be exactly the way you want, or you have to fight a little harder, or for whatever. But yes, it brings me joy all the time, and I wouldn't do it otherwise, because there's enough problems in the world. I want to have something that I can completely devote to, that brings me joy, that brings me happiness, that makes me feel fulfilled, and dance does.
Samantha, bring us home.
I think that the joy is I was going to say, it's sort of, for me, the joy is in the process, right? I sometimes think the audience misses all the fun in the studio and the process of how we get there, right? And that the dancers that we're working with right now are actually really bringing me joy in the way that they work and the way that they perform. And I'm hoping that they will bring that to New Haven for the performances, because they really have it, and they are delightful.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much for just joining me today on this episode of WNHHLP 103.5 FM's Arts Respond. If folks have questions, I think the best way is to go to the ticket link, which Harry Droz has dropped. But are there other ways that folks can follow the work that both of you are doing?
So you can go to the Socolo Theater Dance Ensemble. We have a website, we have Instagram. So theater spelled fancy, R-E, Socolo Theater Dance Ensemble. And to follow Gail's work, she's the
director of the DorisHumphreyFoundation.org. So you can go to that website.
HumphreyFoundation.org.
HumphreyFoundation.org, yes.
.com isn't right, .org. HumphreyFoundation.org and SocoloTheaterDanceEnsemble.org. And you can follow all the things we're doing and a lot of the fun things we get to do together.
Yes. And I should say, New York, we're very lucky that this performance is coming to New Haven, but for folks who are listening, New York is just a hop, skip, and a jump away. Sometimes I forget, especially when it's cold and dreary outside. But all you got to do is get on a train, a nice little ride, bring a book, and there are lots of places to see dance. We're very lucky, especially in this season. We are in an exciting season of live performance.
It's wonderful.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you very much.
Take care, and I'll see you on December 6th.
Yes.
Yes, great.